You're awfully close there, bud. Do you have running water, or do you have a toilet? And yes, I have all of those things. The fact that the United States has not adopted bidets as the norm is beyond me.
This channel and its content are purely for entertainment. If you happen to learn something, awesome. I'm not a professional mechanic, fabricator, HVAC tech, contractor, chef, etc. Take my advice loosely and use it if you like and agree. Otherwise, do it your way. Enjoy the video. All right, here we are at the tiny house today, and I'm here with my son Colton, and his wife Amanda is inside the house. Colton and I built this house 3.5 years ago. He's been living here pretty much by himself, other than Amanda sort of kind of in process of moving in, but he's been here for pretty much over 3 years by himself, and then she's coming and going. They just got married last fall. So now they're making a little more room here, and you can see he's got a shed up there now, which you can see barely see the tiny house behind that, and we'll go up there and talk about that. The bottom line is, like every man's dream, his garage slash shed is bigger than his house. That ain't saying much when this is a tiny house, but it is true.
The shed is 12 by 20, and the house on the interior is 8 by 20, and then plus the 3 feet of massive porch that you get along with that.
We are very secluded out here in the middle of the woods on several acres that Colton rents here. It's a nice area, just perfect for a tiny house.
It is really perfect for a tiny house because I plug into a 50 amp plug on a pole, which is very rare to find to rent. They're becoming more and more popular, properties that are allowing things like tiny houses to go on them, but I got super lucky finding this property. It's 2.5 acres, mostly wood, so I don't have to do a ton of landscaping, and it was ready to plug and play when I arrived. Very rare, got very lucky, and it's not that expensive.
All right, so as we'll take our approach up here, check out the shed here real quick. I don't think it'll be in this video, probably a different video, but we did some electrical. We'll have some footage of that. Behind there, you can see the tiny house. It is 1.5 story. He does have a loft in there, and we'll get inside and see that here in a bit. Just kind of walking along here, I'll just show you. Colton is very much into building primitive outdoor things.
Tool construction! Construction.
One of his small creations is he took some, I guess, downed trees.
A couple of them were down.
They may have came down
Maybe
on
two
purpose.
of those poles came down on purpose. They're cedar.
He made a little lean-to here, and it's served as somewhat of a carport, garage, whatever over time. Most importantly, kayak storage. To the left of there, you'll see what was formerly his only shed workspace garage type of thing. It's been here since he moved in. It served him well.
It did its job. I mean, for a cheap temporary solution to keep things weatherproof, well, to keep things weather resistant, let's say, it works. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it as a permanent option. These tents are pretty cheap, and they don't necessarily hold water out completely, and critters are a problem.
He does have a palletized floor.
I got a bunch of free pallets from a truck yard that I do a bunch of work at, and then I bought a big RV outdoor mat that you would take camping with you if you have a camper or whatever, to put down outside. Just put that on top of it and kept everything on top of that, and that tends to keep the moisture out pretty good, as opposed to just having everything on the ground, because my yard is mostly moss. I get so little sunlight back here because of all these trees that just holds moisture, and everything on this property is at a grade anyway, so water just flows continually here when it rains pretty hard.
You will see some propane tanks up here, a couple of just normal, 20-pound tanks. Then he's got a 100-pound tank over here. He's got a gas-fired instant water heater inside, which we'll take a look at when we go in there. Plus he's got a gas stove for cooking. So that's what we're powering that with, is these propane. And we designed this with just a propane shutoff and fitting on the outside here that you can hook up any normal gas grill type of tank or whatever.
I've got two 20-pound tanks. If I hook one of these up with the water heater and the stove, I can probably run for a month, depending on how often Amanda's around. With the 100-pound, I can probably last 4 or 5 months. Highly recommend anytime you guys are using propane tanks, even if you're just using a 20-pound tank, take it to your local propane place and get it filled. Don't go to your local box store or gas station and get a refill. One, they're gonna overcharge you for less propane because they don't fill them all the way up. And two, you're gonna just be paying a lot more for it. So I just went and got these two 20-pound propane tanks filled at a place that's like 15 minutes from here. For the both of them, it cost me $26. If I were to go to Menards down the road and get them at a refill, it would be about 40 bucks, and I'm gonna have less propane. Anytime you do that, it's worth taking the extra 5 minutes or whatever just to go get them filled. You'll last a lot longer and you'll save money. I will note with the propane in the wintertime, since these are not massive tanks, it's taken me a little bit to figure this out, but it's just part of living in a tiny house. Everything's an adventure. You just gotta kind of work through it when it comes along. Wintertime is easily the biggest problem. For anybody living in a tiny house, for a couple of reasons. With the propane, I have a lot of line here. Some of it's tucked up underneath the house so it doesn't get frozen. I really should put some pipe insulation on it. I did at one point and it just got torn up and I haven't replaced it. If you have propane line on the outside of your house running to a tank like this, I would just go ahead and put some cheap pipe insulation on it, basically a pool noodle sitting around. You could cut it in half and half and wrap it around there as well, and that would work. But the issue that I have found with these, specifically with the water heater, it doesn't for some reason affect the stove as much, although it still does, is that when it gets really cold, and it doesn't get super cold very often, but we've had several days this year, this winter specifically, that it's gotten down to like 2 degrees Fahrenheit or 0 degrees Fahrenheit. For whatever reason, the propane, the liquid propane in these tanks, the pressure drops inside the tanks. And then as well, like I said, these can actually freeze on it if you're not careful. When the pressure drops, it's not like the propane doesn't work, it just doesn't want to flow. So it doesn't want to turn into its gaseous state and function properly for the house. I've taken a couple of cold showers this winter. That's just part of it. They do make heaters for the smaller tanks. They're kind of expensive, so I don't have one. I do plan on getting a heated wrap for it that I can put on one of those smaller tanks in case the bigger tank decides to drop some pressure throughout the winter time. I can just switch over pretty easily to the smaller tank with a heated wrap around it, and that should take care of the issue as long as I got the pipe insulation on. If it gets really super cold, the pressure can drop in these and then you lose your propane. So it's something to think about anytime you're using propane, honestly on a normal house as well. Unfortunately, they don't really make heater blankets for these big tanks, as far as I can tell, unless you want to spend like $600, which in my opinion is not really worth it. If you're willing to spend that, go for it, but I'm not there in my life, in my budget. I don't have one of those.
You can hear probably the vent pipe coming from the water heater that's inside there.
So if you take a look at this, it took me a couple of years to really figure it out properly. And again, that's part of living in a tiny house. You're kind of just figuring it out as you go because nobody has a rule book on these things. This is my winterized skirting. If I was on a piece of property that I owned or I was planning on living here for a significant amount of time, more than like 4 or 5 years, I would do this permanently and that would take care of my problem. However, I didn't want to put something permanent in knowing that eventually I was going to move the house anyway. What I came to was this foam board, which is essentially just 1-inch foam board insulation, fairly common, but basically we just painted this stuff black. For a couple of reasons we did that. One, because this stuff's pink, it's got writing all over it, looks kind of stupid. The other thing is, black obviously will absorb some heat over the winter time, so just trying to maintain as much heat as we can on the house. If you don't have a skirting under your house, we're sitting on a trailer here, you guys can't see it right now, but if it were in the summertime, I'd have all this taken down, you'd be able to see it. Airflow underneath this house is a huge problem. I mean, even in a normal house, like you have to have your foundation and your perimeter of your house needs to be sealed up except for your vents. Otherwise, your floor will get really cold and your pipes will freeze, your water pipes, your P-traps, whatever. So that's a huge issue. And I only have 2x4 walls. That's not a lot of insulation between my water pipes and the exterior, the weather, whatever. So this is the solution that we came up with. Eventually I came up with, is that we use this 1-inch foam board, and you can see it's on the house. There's house behind this. This wraps around about half the house. That's because this is where all my water lines run. It's not a huge thing, but it's, again, it's more insulation and it's sealed against the outside of the house. So it's like I'm wrapping my water pipes in a blanket. So that I've done that, and this runs down obviously behind this tarp here, and it's sealed up really good with Gorilla tape. So that stuff I've found, actually this is T-Rex tape. I've used Gorilla tape in the past. They both work really well, but for something like this where I need this stuff to stay up all winter long, it's very, very beneficial because it seals to this foam board and it doesn't allow air to get inside. The other thing I came up with is, because foam board is rigid, tape can kind of get loose on occasion when you're making a 90-degree angle around corners. Is this year I went ahead and bought this, I can't even remember how thick it is, but it's very heavy vinyl tarp, and I just custom ordered it. I ordered 4 of them, so for 4 sides of the house. What we did is we just put some cheap like command hooks on the foam board itself, taped them on there, and then ran the grommets through those and just put some cheap tent stakes in the ground. And so as you can see here, this is blocking any airflow from getting into my seams here. I mean, all this is taped up, but it's blocking anything, any kind of air from getting in there. And I have had 0 problems this year with pipes freezing or even worrying about it. I haven't let my my faucets drip at all. I mean, we've had 0-degree nights and I haven't had an issue. I do have a couple of heaters plus my mini split inside, but again, the water freezing has not been an issue, and actually it has in the past. That is a significant thing that anyone needs to think about if you're ever thinking about owning a tiny house at all. If you're planning on having permanent water in the wintertime, make sure you get the bottom sealed up. Otherwise, you're going to be in a world of hurt.
I will quickly hit the electric here. Colton was fortunate enough to have a pole here that's designed for an RV type of a setup, like you get at a permanent powered RV park or something. He's got a 50 amp breaker, so he does have a 50 amp service that we connected and built into this house that's run through this cable there on the left. It's just like a 50-foot 50 amp cable that we connect here and then jack into the house, and so that gives him his power at the service panel that we've got in there. He's got just a regular 20 amp outlet there for an extension cord to have stuff out here, as well as we just got through adding the 30 amp cord there on the right, which is what he's powering his shed with, which we've got most of the power ran for that permanently. And you can see from that back here on the side of the shed over there, the box sticking out now that we plug that into. So that gives him portable power for this shed that runs on a 30 amp breaker to another service panel that's inside there. And again, you'll see more of that in the video on the power that we did. Meet Feathers, that would be the kitty.
She's in her cat condo.
So to our right here, we will take a look at the Hillbilly hot tub setup.
Oh, feels good. Oh yeah. I never get a warm bath. Oh my God.
Fairly simple setup here. As you can see, that's kind of frozen at the moment. Need to insulate the lid before we're able to use it in the winter time again. I think it's called thermo siphoning. What we've done, it's fairly common, other people have done the same thing, is I bought this this barrel stove. It's basically, they make conversion kits for these 55-gallon metal drums. You can take any 55-gallon drum and put these conversion kits on them and make it into a wood stove. But I just bought this off of Marketplace. Somebody had listed it on there and I didn't want to have to build it, so I bought it. It conveniently came with 2 holes in the front of it here that I was able to run my copper pipe out of into the hot tub. So essentially what happens is I will build a fire inside the stove. You can't, it's kind of dark in there, but essentially there is a copper coil inside the stove. You build a fire around that copper coil or inside the copper coil, and then you fill the tub up with water. And so the water goes through the bottom hole into the copper pipe, and then the fire heats up the water, and once it gets hot enough, it spits back into the hot tub through the top pipe. So basically it's just siphoning through which is, again, thermosiphoning, I think is what it's called. But it takes probably 4 or 5 hours depending on the heat inside the stove. And you got to be careful with it, because originally I didn't have this. This is just pallet wood that we threw some more foam board insulation inside of around the outside of the stock tank that we have. If you don't insulate it, it's fairly difficult to get it up to a normal hot tub temperature. We threw the insulation on the inside and ran some pallet boards around the outside and made this lid to go on it. If all of that is good and you're sealed up properly, I mean 4 or 5 hours and it's 104 degrees, and it's fairly easy to use. You just feed the fire every 20-30 minutes and you're good to go. So that's it. I really enjoy it. I don't have a bathtub inside the house, and I don't necessarily take baths in it, but to be able to sit inside a really warm, hot water tub is really nice to have when you don't have access to anything else.
And I'm pretty sure that this also doubles as a moonshine situation. Pretty sure he's got condensation coming out the top pot, and that could be moonshine, but I don't know. He won't tell me that.
I mean, you could probably convert it, but...
This used to be his shower.
Yeah, you can still see the nail. I didn't even put this nail in. Somebody had this nail here, but when I originally moved here, I was on a strict timeline. We were on a strict timeline to get the house built. And unfortunately, some things didn't get done. One of those things would have been the shower. So I bought a like $20 or $30 solar camping shower, filled it up with hot water inside, hung it on this nail, and showered outside for a couple months. Until it was about October, started to get real cold, and then I decided that it was time to put something inside.
All right, you can see the front porch. We're gonna go around to the side here. We'll come back to this as we enter the house, but nice little front porch. Got a place to sit down, temporary steps. All wood, just a natural finish.
I will note, I did not buy this firewood that you see stacked here. This all came off of the tree that decided to fall on the house about a year and a half ago. I was inside the house when it happened, and it sounded like a huge earthquake. Honestly, I thought we were having an earthquake or a tornado or something. And if we can look at it. You showed the water heater pipe coming out the wall pipe over there. You can see that we've put like a roof around the water heater pipe so no moisture can get inside. It's all bent up. The roof is somewhat bent up. I plan on replacing it eventually. It wasn't enough damage to where it caused any leaks or anything like that, or any structural damage. And luckily I just caught the canopy of the tree, but it was a massive hickory tree that fell from inside the woods and shook me pretty good. So it took me a long time to cut up the tree, and we had to have the power company come out and rerun the power line because it knocked all of my power out. At the time, my vehicle was in the shop and I had a rental vehicle. It crushed the hood of the vehicle. It got my motorcycle. It was a fun time. If I were to own this property, I would definitely clear the trees out, and eventually when I do have this house on a different piece of property, I will clear the trees out far enough so that if anything were to fall, it does not have the potential of crushing the house, which is good practice anyway if you live near woods.
All right, I might just note, mini split, here's the outside unit. We ran that. We did actually run all the piping inside the wall. The drain plug that comes out the bottom there. And then of course our electrical is running in a flexible conduit there, and then up to a disconnect box that we've got up there that's powered off of a 20 amp circuit off of the service panel that's inside. So this has worked really well. I think the key to that, as like really any air conditioner, is keeping snow and stuff off of it in the wintertime. He did have a problem with that getting froze up one winter, and we had to thaw it out and chip the ice off of it to get his heat back. Basically a heat pump. If it gets completely frozen up, it's not going to generate any heat. You can see over here more of his insulated foam board, as well as the skirting that's on this side. And
the only reason this is notched out here is because this is where my plug is. So just like what you saw in the shed on the other side over there, this is the 50 amp plug that powers the house. It runs underneath the house and into the box on the other side. So I just didn't want any holes for any insulation for air to get in. So this is what I came up with. Works pretty well. Underneath us set of blocks down here, and you'll see the garden hose there. Actually, there's just a water connection down there, like a water hose type connection. So that's what we're actually feeding the water to the house with, and it goes up and, you know, converts into regular indoor plumbing. But we've got the feed is not hard plumbed in. It's much like an RV where you would just have to jack into a water hose type of connection. And I had some video, and it's really dark, but now that it's daylight, I'll take a look at the pizza oven. Taking a break here for some wood-fired pizza. Again, this is actually, I think this was Amanda's, what, Christmas present she got? Yeah. But pellet wood-fired pizza oven. It works really good. We had pizza last night. It was delicious. And I guess just a little more hillbilly ingenuity going on out here. Wood-fired pizzas in the yard, so. Honestly, best homemade pizza I've ever had. Highly recommended. If you're into pizza, check out wood-fired pizza ovens. We will take a walk inside here. A little window. I will note that he's got a lot of these little solar lights, and they're really handy walking beside his house at night. He's got them all along the path, on the shed, on the house. These things are highly recommended. They're not very expensive, and they do a great job lighting up. They don't cost you anything to run. All right. I want to take your shoes off. Wife will get mad. All right, well, this is it. This is the inside. Another thing that I didn't have complete when I moved in was the closet. Like many things that I did with this house, it was purely for necessity. We're actually about to redo this entire thing because she's moving in April. That way she will have a lot more storage, and the use of the space will be much more functional. Many upgrades have happened over the years, and that's part of the learning process. You live in it for a while and figure out how you can use the space a little bit better. But it's coming along. As you can see, we're in the living room, the kitchen, the laundry room, and through the doors, the bathroom. So 175 square feet. Very small, if you don't know what that means. Probably about the size of your bedroom in your house. Maybe a little bit smaller than that. Is what I live in. You can see up top we have my loft. I have a queen bed up there. And I've got, I don't know, like 3.5 feet of headroom. I grew up sleeping in a bunk bed on the top bunk, so it's not a huge deal for me to sleep up there. Some people get claustrophobic, but not me. That's the loft. You can take a look up there if you want to. This ladder, I might mention, came from a telephone company that my grandpa used to work for. He had a couple of them in his barn. And he actually helped out significantly with the house in several ways when we were building it. And he had 2 of these in his barn, and I took this one, cut it down just slightly, and mounted it to the loft. And it works really, really well. It's very solid hardwood, and the cat likes to climb it too, so she sleeps up there. That's her little safety bar, if you can't tell. She's fallen off the loft twice now, and it's about 7-something feet in the air, so it's a pretty hefty fall. This would be the master suite. Got everything you need. Fan, lights, mattress, plenty of windows. Does have access to turn the lights off up here as well. So if he gets to bed and forgot to turn his lights off, he has the ability to do that from here. Or Amanda can do it too. Yeah, not a lot of headroom, but there's enough to get up here and sleep. All right, so we'll take a look this direction, just to give you an idea what the living room looks like. And yeah,
We'll welcome Amanda.
Welcome, Amanda. Hello. So this is where you were, the perspective that you were just looking from. So again, this is closet here. My massive 28-inch flat screen TV. It's like sitting in the IMAX theater.
Every seat in the theater is specially positioned for optimal viewing.
Being 3 feet away from it, but I enjoy it. So again, like many of the things in this house that have just progressed over time, a couple of things that I have not finished is one is this couch. This is a custom couch that some people have called it a futon. I take offense to that. It's a couch.
Futons, at least it's not the floor.
But it's custom built. I custom designed it like everything else in this house. Not unlike some things that I've seen people do in other tiny houses or vans or even campers. It pulls out. So I got these cushions. I think I ordered these cushions off of Amazon. These are just like 70-inch couch insert cushions, 6-inch depth. And we got these couch cushion covers custom made for them a little while ago. If you can take a look down here, these will pull out, so I can demonstrate it for you. These will pull out. So this is where my father slept last night. This pulls out like this, same over here, and then I can actually lay these both down, and this essentially becomes a full-size bed. It's a fairly decent-sized bed. I mean, if you're 6 foot or under, it's comfortable. If you're 6 foot or over,
you gotta lay it
sideways,
at an angle a little bit, but it's actually very comfortable. I slept really well.
But yeah, I've slept down here many times. Very, very comfortable, and gives us plenty of room to have guests. Even though we're only in 175 square feet, you can easily sleep 4 people in here. This is my cello. Bought that a couple of years ago.
Cello.
I've never learned how to play it. I will one day. This is my guitar. That stuff's moving out to the shed to give us more space, as well as my drum set. It's going to go out there finally. I've lived here for 3.5 years and I've never had a place for my drum set, but once we get the office done, we'll have a place for it and can finally keep that here. You can also tell that there is some extra storage up top. If you're starting to notice like this house doesn't look finished, you'd be right. Because I haven't ever put any trim up. It just never really bothered me that much to do it, but I will eventually. That's actually very, very necessary. This basically goes over the top of the porch. Even though it's pretty small, I can stick a ton of stuff up there, and it saves so much space for me to have stuff from not being cluttering the closet, not be cluttering the other loft where I sleep, or up here for anything extra. If you want to take a look at the kitchen here, we can do that. We'll shuffle around.
Come around here.
So this is the kitchen area slash laundry room, if you will. This is the gas stove slash oven. I don't remember how big this is, but essentially this is made for either small apartments or RVs. I mean, it was a fairly common thing to find, so not a huge problem finding these things, but it's smaller, obviously, than your average stove or oven. Works for what we need. Got all of our pans hung, so we can get those out of the way. Our cast iron, obviously, is hung on the wall up there. We use those all the time. I don't have a ton of sunlight that comes onto this property because, again, of the trees outside. So my lovely wife found, I don't even know what this is called, but she found this plant for me. And this thing's...
It's a snake plant.
There you go, it's a snake plant. It will stay alive with very little sunlight. If you have a house or an office or whatever with very little sunlight, snake plant. Just keep it away from animals because I don't think they're allowed to get near it or bite it or chew it. Got everything that a normal kitchen essentials would have. We don't have extras. We do have an air fryer that recently came along with some of the other things that Amanda has slowly snuck into the house without me knowing. Oops. But we have everything: microwave, stove, like I said, sink, toaster. This is the water heater. If we wanted to, we could enclose this. I personally don't care. I kind of like the industrial look, and then obviously have the controls on it. It's a touchscreen, so I have no desire to really enclose this at all. If we wanted to put something over the top of it and close it in like you would, like a big water heater, we could, but I really don't care to. And then this is my food wall slash refrigerator slash this is worth noting. You may or may not know that these exist, but this is basically a all-in-one washer and dryer. This is a lifesaver for me, particularly because I have the ability to wash and dry in here with one unit. If I were to need 2 units, I just absolutely would not have the space. Huge lifesaver for me. I would not recommend this for a normal house. Maybe if it was an extra unit or it was going in an apartment or something, I would recommend it. But the problem with these in particular is the load capacity is a lot smaller inside the unit, as well as they are ventless. Like a normal dryer, you would have to run a vent out of your building, whatever you're putting it in. This does not have that. It basically just uses spinning and heat. It does dry. It takes a lot longer to dry, so an average dryer probably takes, what, maybe 45 minutes to an hour. This takes like 2 hours to dry, but it gets the job done, and it gets the job done for me. I don't have to take my laundry to laundromat or anything like that. It works for what I need it. It is very loud though, shakes a lot, but I love it. It works for me. And we can take a look at the bathroom, I guess.
This will be the pantry.
Yeah, part of it. We are gonna put another sort of pantry shelf thing over here.
Just have some wall space there.
Just to add a little bit more space for storage.
Before I go back there to the bathroom, this is the mini split inside unit. You'll see we've got the power feed wire kind of hanging down there. We did have some issues by the way we had to run this out and keep it inside the wall with the drain line not properly being at the right angle to drain the water. Colton was able to temporarily get this pulled out of there, which was kind of stopping the drain from working correctly, and it was backing up in there. But it looks unsightly, but it's keeping the drain from coming back in here and working correctly, so it actually drains outside like it's supposed to.
And here we are in the bathroom. So this is a recent addition. If you can see this, this is just a normal exhaust fan for bathroom. I didn't have this until what, maybe a year ago we put that in?
I think it was last year, yeah.
Originally I would just keep it was just me living here. I'd just keep the door open when I was taking hot showers because the steam, obviously, you know, there's wood siding on the walls in here, and then the loft obviously is wood. The car siding on the interior walls, I mean, they're painted with some very thick, durable interior paint that holds up well to moisture, so not a huge deal, but obviously the loft being wood, it's sealed as well. But again, if you're in a small room like we are right now with a bunch of moisture, you're just asking for problems. One of those things where we knew it was probably going to have to happen eventually, but we just didn't have the time or money to do it at the time. So it was an extra addition that we did, and it works really well. We didn't put the light in because we already had the light, but and we didn't put it on a separate switch. We just put it on the light switch, so anytime the light comes on, the fan comes on, not a huge problem for me. But yeah, we have shelves for storage. We might end up putting some more shelving in eventually. We got the toilet, which is a notable thing about the toilet is that it is a 10-inch on center toilet. So essentially, most toilets in your home or that are sold are 12-inch on center from the wall. So from your wall board, whatever you've got, drywall or whatever. What that means is you would have to center the hole that your drain goes through 12 inches from the wall. This is a 10-inch, so it gives me an extra 2 inches for space in here, which doesn't sound like a lot, but you live in 175 square feet for long enough, 2 inches starts to matter. No pun intended.
That's what she said.
We've got the shower. So this was a custom built shower. Personally, I don't love it. Again, like I said earlier, I was showering outside at the time. I've never done any sort of shower work at all. As you can see, I didn't trim out the top. Honestly, I've seen several people do things like this, and it definitely functions for what I need it to, but this is basically roofing material, just like any metal roofing that you would put on. I got it for free, so I didn't have to spend any money on it, which is one of the reasons I used it. And the other reason is we couldn't come up with a great way of building the shower because of where the drain's located. When we were doing it, if we were to get like a custom drain pan made for us, it was going to be like 4 to 6 weeks out, which for us was just, it didn't matter anyway at that point. It was like we needed to move on with our lives and focus on the other parts of the house. Originally, I was going to take a 3-foot stock tank and make a soaker tub at the bottom there, which eventually I might still do, depending. I basically tiled out a bench and a drain pan and then I put the metal roofing on the exterior of the showers. This is actually another camper thing. It's a shower door that's supposed to go in like camper showers. Another thing that I don't necessarily love and will probably replace eventually, but it does the trick. It's better than having a shower curtain. I mean, it seals and water stays in, so I don't have to worry about water coming out at all. Yeah, it just comes out, slides in and out just like that. And then we have our tiny little sink here, which is fun. And again, the number one thing that I always get asked when I tell people that I live in a tiny house, or that they find out, is, yeah, you're awfully close there, but is, do you have running water, or do you have a toilet? And yes, I have all of those things. It's a normal house. Everything is basically the same as a normal house, except it's in a lot more cramped of an area. A lot of people don't go to the extent of what we did with the house. Some people put composting toilets in. Some people cut corners in other ways. I never really wanted that. I don't think necessarily you have to compromise on the essentials if you want to still be a minimalist and live the lifestyle. It might take a little bit more work and effort to go the extra mile and do some of the things that we did, but in the end, I think it's worth it. One thing that we did miss, however, is this is not currently usable. It would be if we moved the cat litter box. I built this desk when I started my current job about 2 years ago, and this pulls down as a desk. So if I were to pull this out and pull all the way down, the reason it's not currently usable is because the cat litter box is there and it won't go all the way down. But I had a chair behind there, and I was using this tiny little desk for my work. Again, it worked for me. It worked for what I needed it to work for. Obviously, working from home in a tiny house is not ideal when you don't have a place to sit and use your laptop. So this was huge for me. Amanda still uses it sometimes when she has to study for med school or whatever. We can move the cat litter box and just put our chair back behind there, and it works. All things that you start to learn, better understand how you can use your space and make it functional for you. I don't think that there's a rule book or anything to follow when you're living in situations like this. It's just about what you want and what you want out of it.
Another little quick view of the bathroom from inside. It's a little tough to even turn around in here, but he does have a window, which is nice. Still not framed out or not trimmed out, which again, it's a work in progress. Here's our service panel. This is where we're feeding in the 50 amp circuit too, and he's got circuits for, you know, both sides, outlets and lights and everything else from there. Light switch. Again, important, I think. It is a full-size toilet. It is 10 inches on center, like he said, but it's a full-size toilet with the most important component of it there, cheap bidet. So.
The fact that the United States has not adopted bidets as the norm is beyond me. Because that thing costs what? I mean, you bought it. It's like 30 bucks.
30 bucks.
And it is a life changer. Not only do I spend a lot less money and use a lot less toilet paper, but it's an experience in itself. Let me take note. Just try it. You might like it.
Did have an option here for the cat to get in this. I don't think it was well used, and so they've just got storage in there now, but that's a cat door.
Yeah, it was a good idea. She didn't necessarily love it. It was her preference. She didn't love getting in. If we made the door bigger, she might have used it a little bit more. But originally we had the litter box inside there, and she could just go in there and use the litter box. But if I had to climb through a tiny door any time I needed to take a dump, I think I'd probably not enjoy myself either. So we moved it back out here, and we just use that for storage now.
Well, that's accidents now.
I don't know. This is a barn door, I guess. I guess it is a full size. So I guess you do have a full size door to go through when you take a dump.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have to crawl through a tiny door.
Again, just another view of the water heater. You can see all the plumbing and clean outs and all that stuff down below there. Water pipes coming in and out, vent pipes, everything's there. And again, this thing's gas fired, so you'll see the gas line coming up there to it. All that's hidden down below there as well. There's some gas shutoffs for the stove and for that underneath the countertop. He does have nice cabinets with a nice countertop. Got a nice little sink. Everything you'd need, just small.
And the feathers.
And the
Queen in
feathers.
her castle.
That's her perch.